How you doing?
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. We I'm glad you set up this second day. Because yesterday I don't know what happened. I
Yeah.
think I was too excited. I couldn't sleep the night before about like certain things, including our call.
Well, good. Thank you. I took that as I looked at that the other day and I took that as a compliment. So I also am excited. So I'm just ready to jump into. And again, we don't have any agenda, but what we'll be talking about is, just manifestation, law of attraction, and you know, individual experiences and so forth. So uh, once you're ready, we'll just go on and get started.
I'm ready if you are.
What most people don't realize, this conversation is probably like 5 years in the making. We had
Yeah.
started communicating about 5 years ago, and lives happen, and we went on our separate ways and so forth, and then we recently caught up. So, and of course, that happened by us having that interview with Mr. Lindo, and so I reached back out to you and said, "We'd love to talk to you." So here we are. Now, I've watched, a few of your videos and so forth, and what I discovered that there were some commonalities. We're kind of no nonsense about the law of attraction, manifestation. Neville got it. We don't do the games and so forth and make the false promises and so forth. Where did that come from on your side?
I think that's from how I started, which was that I didn't start off teaching this stuff. I started off experiencing it in a very full way. It kind of like I manifested something that was so undeniable that I had done that. And when it showed up, it was sort of very, very, uh, I want to use the word serendipitous, the way everything happened, that my whole career started out with a bang of like how I manifested in my life. And just knowing how I went through the process
Mhm.
firsthand, that's just how I explain it to other people. I don't like sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
I don't make it like a Candyland thing or like make any promises, because we can't promise people anything that they're going to manifest. We
Correct.
tell them how to practice states,
Mhm.
and what they're manifesting is going to be a reflection of that. So
Correct.
there's no need for us to make any promises. We just tell them, like Neville said, I want no church, no ism, just to tell you who you are,
Yeah.
and then to see the connection between what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. So yeah, I think that like kind of, also I'm from New York, so I'm very straight shooter. Like I don't
Yeah.
I just say it like it is. I don't like filter things I say. So yeah, when I'm teaching, I'm very, very aware of not making things seem like, you know, hey, everything's perfect. If you do this, then you're going to get this and your life's going to be shiny. We're always going to be in the process of manifesting the next and the next. And life is not meant to be this like, living in the clouds and acting like we're unaffected by things that
Correct.
we don't like contrast. It's about just using all the tools and knowing how they go together and making your own masterpiece,
Yeah.
sort of. And masterpieces have all sorts of variety of colors in them usually, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
Absolutely.
not I think.
Yeah. And even speaking on a masterpiece, the person, the Leonardo or the person that's creating the masterpiece, they see the flaws. We see the flaws in our own life. Now, somebody looking on the outside, looking at Army, they would say, oh, she's got everything together. Everything's perfect. Looking at DeCarlo and what DeCarlo presents, he's got everything. And it's just not so. And Mr. Lindo and I talk about this often, that, you know, we're ongoing in our evolution, in our manifestation, in what it is that we're discovering. So,
Yeah.
breakthrough that you discovered, did you know about Neville at that time, or was Neville after the breakthrough?
Neville was after,
Okay.
actually, after my first like in my face manifestation, where I realized that, okay, this stuff actually works. and um and the reason it worked is because I wasn't trying to work it. I was just trying to feel better.
Hmm.
And through the feeling better, what I wanted manifested. And Neville came after that because he is quoted in The Secret, even the American, like the non-Australian version. Neville's quotes are written in the background of the movie The Secret. So I had seen his name, I guess, and I had seen like some of his words, but I really had not looked into who he is because when I researched some of the teachers who were on The Secret, he was not one of them because he wasn't like a live person who was there. He was quoted, in not even in spoken word, but his words were on flashed on the screen. But I didn't specifically look into his stuff. Both Abraham and Neville came after that first manifestation.
Okay. Okay. So, and this is what I know because we've had conversations that you come from a Catholic background, I come from a Christian background. What Neville did for me, and you could probably clarify for yourself, it cleared up some things. It helped me to take what I knew because I had been studying, religion for years, and so when I heard Neville, first time I heard Neville for me, I was kind of terrified because he took me out of my religious comfort zone. How about you?
Mhm. Yeah, and well, I was baptized Armenian Apostolic, so it's Christian. It's not very different from Catholicism, but so I had the Armenian church background, but we didn't really go to church. And then I went to Catholic school, so I had more. That's where I really learned more about scripture, and then the religion itself of Catholicism. But I'm sorry, what was the what was the question?
Well,
I want
when
to.
you linked Neville to your
Oh,
belief system, to your Catholicism, your religion, did
yeah,
you find that that was a stretch from
yeah.
what you
I
grew up
actually,
knowing?
for me, it was more like the religious influences and spiritual influences I had before I came across Neville's work. Um, I felt like I wasn't like a devout religious, like my family was not very religious, so I wasn't very deep into um like the dogma, like that aspect of it. But I went when I was learning religion in school, I knew that there were some holes in it. Like
Yeah,
I knew that um they mean well and some of it feels good,
yeah,
but some of it doesn't, and I just didn't, I just sat with that and I didn't feel the need to make it make sense. I
mhm,
just like appreciated the good parts of what it was and what role it had in my life at that point. So when I came across Neville, it didn't scare me. It more just immediately those holes filled in.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's actually a good point. For me, that's actually what it ended up doing. What I guess, and I'll give a short example. For many years, I was involved in church and so forth, and so I was also teaching and so forth,
Oh.
and I was in a community.
Mhm.
And being in that community, there was like accountability and so forth. So after I linked to Neville, a person that I was in like Bible studies with and studies with, she reached out to me and she says, "Brother, I'm a little concerned
I've
about
gotten
this,
those.
about this Neville person and so forth." And I told her, I said, my relationship with God has actually grown deeper since my experience with Neville than it was in traditional Christianity. I said, but because I don't want to offend you, what I'm going to do in love is unfriend you so that my posts won't come to you. I said, because I don't mean any offense. So shortly thereafter, I unfriended her. Her husband reached out to me to befriend me. So I guess he wanted to see what she was talking about me talking about Neville. And so that was when I said it stretched me beyond my traditional religion. So
Yes.
have you experienced any of that?
I've had um two people who I call cousins. We're not technically related, but we kind of grew up together with our families.
Mhm.
So two separate people who are not really tied to each other, who are they're born again Christian now, and um, we grew up in the same faith, but yeah, they're Christian. They're Christian. And they both separately messaged me at certain points in the first few years of when I was openly teaching this stuff, and they expressed concern
Yeah.
that um, they read that this is like the devil's work. One of them was saying this is the devil's work. I'm concerned about you. They forwarded me an article to read because they read an article that made them feel that way. And I just like, I was kind of a people pleaser growing up. I don't know if people pleaser is the right word, but I was like goody two shoes, kind of like I did well in school. I behaved. I got the awards.
Didn't want
Like
to
I was an
cause any
honor student.
waves. You weren't one to cause waves.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and which I guess sort of leads to people pleasing in a way because the feedback that I was getting from people's approval is what I until then was using to say I'm doing the right thing because
Right.
people are approving of this,
Yeah.
you know? So that was the first time that not like to an extreme, but there was an aspect of that. But when I understood these teachings and I saw how they are completely true in my own life,
Mm.
even tracking back to the past, I can think back and be like, oh my gosh, this happened because I
Exactly.
had felt this way. This happened because I had felt this way. Yes. And so that was the first time that I got some pushback from people who are close to me. I know they're good people. I know they mean well,
Mhm.
but I didn't question myself.
Mhm.
I didn't say maybe I'm wrong because these people are good people and they're telling me that this could be bad.
Yeah.
I had that inner conviction that I knew that this was good. I knew that this was actually how we are creating our reality
Yeah.
and that it was good.
Mhm.
And not only was it good, but their their worry for it, their worry about it, I kind of felt like if anything, if I was the one to be concerned, I would be concerned that they're being kept from these truths.
Yeah.
So while they think that they were helping and protecting me by giving me that advice of like, be careful with this stuff because it could be the devil's work, um, I was actually able to hear that and not be too moved by it and know that I'm actually wishing that they weren't so limited in their spiritual,
Yeah. Mhm.
journey that they're afraid of this. Like,
Yeah.
what are they being taught that they're afraid of this, which is freedom? This
Yeah.
is freedom.
Yeah. You asked the question, what were they being taught? I was them. And literally, so had you
And that's so
caught me,
important.
yeah,
That's so important for you now to have had
correct,
that experience.
correct. If you had caught me some years back, and I would have heard you teaching on this, because the indoctrination that I received through the church was anything unlike what it is that we teach. And the funny thing is, many of the principles for those whose eyes are open align with scripture. But the church, in my experience, had kept us powerless to just trust in a person and to trust in solely what I teach you. And
Yeah.
you go outside of what I teach you, not what scripture teaches you, not what spirit teaches you, but what
Yes.
I as an organization teach you, then
Yes.
we start talking about demonic, we start talking about sadism, we start talking about the occult, everything to, it's like these buzzwords to keep you silent, and so
Yeah.
that was my experience. So when people come on my page, when they show up on my YouTube channel, Instagram, whatever, I have a level of understanding. So I'll communicate. But what I don't try to do is convince anybody. My job in what I do right now, what Mr. Lindo and I do together,
Hmm.
our job is to teach you that you think. And as you think, be it done unto you. Ours is not to give you a God to choose from. That's not our purpose. You to discover that for yourself. But
Yeah.
thinking creates reality. And that's biblical. That's spiritual teaching of multiple disciplines that will tell you that. But like I said, when the religious person hears that, it sounds like it's outside. Jesus says, be it done to you according to your faith. As a man thinks, scripture says, so
It's
has it, on and on and on
it's
and on.
woven into scripture all
It's
throughout.
woven, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, interesting, interesting. So as you, I do have a question. I was thinking about this, and I've been thinking about this for a few weeks now, probably a month now, with AI, the advent of AI. Wonderful too. I love AI. I love the tools and so forth. Now, many of us, we hear AI and we go, oh, that's demonic. Again, that conversation comes up. But my biggest challenge with AI is whether it be with Neville or Joseph Murphy or, right now I'm listening to something from Napoleon Hill.
I have to, yeah.
Yeah. People have taken AI and they've created new texts. And what I mean by that, for example, Neville didn't teach on the principle of, let's say, SP. Matter of fact, if he taught anything about SP, he was kind of against it. And he tells a story, and the story, I'll do the short version of it. Young lady's about ready to get married, and she says, it's got to be that man. And Neville said, that man or no man? She said, it's got to be that man. And he says, but what if that man gets incarcerated? What if he does something bad? She said, no, it's got to be that man. So this is kind of that SP dynamic. And Neville said shortly thereafter, she got married and she was walking down the aisle, but it was somebody totally different. And she kind of looked at him with that look to say, well, okay, it's not that man.
A sheepish look, yep.
Now we have people that literally are creating Neville speaking in his voice and these programs, and Neville's now teaching on SP, and that's my biggest concern with AI. I don't mind AI that takes Neville's work and verbatim puts it back out there so that you can hear it, so the
Right,
quality is much better, because some of those audios are terrible, the older
right.
audios of Neville. So if you could take AI and kind of revamp them and bring them back up to speed using what Neville said, but a lot of people that are new to Neville, they won't know the difference between what
No.
Neville actually said and what
They're
people
putting
are making him say. So what are
they're
your
putting
thoughts?
words in his mouth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that the story of the bride walking down the aisle who had said this man or no man, and then she kind of like Neville sees her walking down the aisle, right? And she kind of looks at him like a little like not embarrassed, but maybe just
Yeah.
like knowing that he okay, so this is actually the guy I really wanted, and it's not that guy. But you may know this, what I'm saying right, what I'm going to say right now, that the majority of people who are in that SP community who are wanting to manifest a specific person, whether it's an ex or not,
Mhm.
um, when they hear that story, they are likely to hear that as a failure because from their perspective of their state that they're hearing it from, they're imagining that that girl walking down the aisle didn't get what she wanted. But the fact of the matter is that she actually did get exactly what she wanted. It's just
Absolutely.
that it was in a different package than she thought it had to be in.
Absolutely.
She
Absolutely.
was probably happier because she's walking down
Absolutely.
the aisle. Yeah. So, but it doesn't matter because you can't, someone who is so stuck to that idea of like this man or no man, or this woman or no woman, they're not gonna see it that way. You
Correct.
can word it any way you want.
Correct.
They will think that anything that's not this person,
Mhm.
even if they're in jail, even if they
Yeah.
become like impossible to live with for some reason, even if
Correct.
they're abuse, whatever. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. They're like,
Absolutely.
no, it has to be this person or nobody.
Correct.
And if it's anybody else, even if it's an amazing person,
It's a
then
failure.
it's a failure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And and I think that that says a lot about the fact that they're not even feeling into it.
Yeah.
They haven't made that connection between what do I want to feel like when I'm in a
Yeah.
relationship? And they're stuck to this idea of like the reason they wanted that person in the first place because they maybe made an initial contact with
Correct.
the idea of that person
Hmm.
and that feeling they wanted,
Hmm.
and they have not worked on it ever since. They have
Right.
not evolved that feeling. They have not really felt into it. They just still have that memory of this person equals my happiness forever.
Yeah.
But that's where it stops.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because I remember, being single and just being out there and so forth. And I didn't know anything about Neville Goddard at that time. And my philosophy was, it's easy when you haven't been in a relationship, when you haven't been married and so forth. And I was a Christian and my theology was, even the wrong person becomes the right person.
Mm,
That's wrong. But that's what I used to teach because I hadn't been in a relationship such as marriage. And
mm,
what you realize is when you get into relationships, now the wrong person sometimes can be the wrong person, and what I made a decision for myself for was I want the person that's best for me. I couldn't always see that, initially when I was searching. So
yeah.
I made a request and I said, if a person wasn't for me, close that door. So if I was pursuing somebody and
Yeah.
the door seemingly closed, I could have a level of peace with that. It's okay. That's not my, I don't chase people. I don't chase friendships. I don't chase, because I believe that those people that are supposed to be in my life will be in my life, to
Yes.
whatever extent. And I also believe that there's seasons. So some people, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, our season can be a single conversation. And once that conversation is done, that season's over. And I said, if that's
Mhm,
the case, I'm okay. Other seasons will last a lifetime. It just
mhm.
depends on it. And some will be longer, some will be shorter. But I realize that everybody has a season in our lives. And that gives me peace. I don't feel like I have to manipulate or, force somebody to be in my life because uh, those people that are supposed to be will be. And those who aren't, that door will be closed.
That that's because you choose to trust in the process and the way in
Correct.
that what is for you, and
Absolutely.
you can't you can't miss what's for you because you know that you've already made that agreement with
Correct.
you and your inner being, your God self,
Mhm.
that if it's for me, it's gonna be
Yeah,
like that's it.
absolutely.
And yeah, so you don't, and that's I think with the SP community, I think that's the largely the kind of mm, thing that is not exactly very healthy, of just this insistence of it's this anxiety behind it.
Correct.
It's like,
Correct.
yeah, it's like I'm an anxious attacher. Like I've been learning a lot about anxious and avoidant attachment styles in relationships, and I'm an anxious attacher. Like I want to know, like when I met Tigran, like well, I knew him already for 10 years before that, but I didn't know him closely. I liked him, but I never knew he would be interested in me
Mhm.
romantically. And when I was separated from my husband and we spent some time together, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like unbelievable. And it was so good for like a, a, for a couple months, but I became anxious because I felt like this is so good.
Yeah.
I have to make sure that this lasts forever. It was like anytime I feel like he kind of pulled back a little bit because we got together very quickly. If he pulled back a little bit, that's even a normal thing. Like I would get very anxious and be like, what's happening? I would like be all over it. And that's repulsive. It's repulsive. I don't know if that's the word, but it repels.
It repels.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it repels obviously. And that goes right in line with all the teachings that we know. If you're desperately
Mhm.
wanting to get something or hold on to something, it's naturally going to be repelled.
Correct.
Not because they intend to be like,
No. It's
see ya, no. But
vibration. We're frequencies.
yeah,
We're frequency beings. So absolutely. Go
yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
And Bashar talks about this too. He calls it insistence. If you're insisting that something happen and happen now, you're basically guaranteeing that you're pushing it away.
Correct.
But if you just loosen up on that insistence, you can have exactly what you
Correct.
want. Just don't be so on top of it. So I had to learn to like
Yeah.
kind of, okay, if I love this person, if I want to be with this person, why am I so anxious? Like I have to like let loose. And that's again, that's a work in progress too.
Yeah.
Like we all have our moments, and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and but that was very important, like to notice that like in all the manifestation
Mhm.
world, in the community of manifesting, like you can tell that the people who are not getting the person or the thing that they want to experience, they're likely anxious about it on some
Correct.
level.
And the anxiety, as Mr. Lindo and I will often say, but it kind of goes into a scriptural verse, is saying, I don't have. It's like to him, her who has, because they are holding the frequency, more shall be given. But to him, her who has not, even that which they
Okay.
have, because
Will be
you're not,
taken.
if you have it, you're not fighting to get it. And when I talk to people about getting into states, it's like they feel like they got to force the state. I'm like, but right now you're in a state right now. I said, you don't force the state of where you're at the moment. You just simply allow it and accept it. I said,
Yeah.
likewise. So if you're in that relationship, and you're absolutely correct, and this is, I've been that person. I remember when I was dating a young lady way back when, and I felt that somehow I was going to lose her. And so I was trying to do everything to ensure that I didn't lose her, but it was the thing that actually repelled her.
Yeah.
And we call it repulsive, whatever, but it did repel her. And it's funny when I tried, it's funny, I was acting out the SP dynamics at that point. So I was trying to get her back. And I told her, I said, I've changed. I've changed. Just, let me prove to you that I've changed. And the only thing that showed up was I was more of the same. You understand? And it wasn't until I was able to completely let her go. We never did reconnect and get back together, but I got to a place that it was okay, you know? And,
Yeah.
but like I said, is when I tried to force it, when I tried to show her that I was a different person and so forth, only thing that showed up was the old me.
Yeah, you're just proving that you're the same because
Yeah,
you feel the need to explain yourself and to
correct.
prove yourself.
Yeah,
But when you actually have changed states, you don't have the need to prove it.
exactly. I understand this. I know that we're both in agreement. We're not speaking against SP. I believe that
No.
if you're holding the vibration, I believe that you can have literally anything that you can hold in vibration. Now, will it always come in a package that we think that it's going to come in? Like, for example, let's say I want to be a millionaire. Let's use that hypothetically speaking. If I say to myself that the bridge of incident has to be this, then I'm limiting how God, universe, source, energy, life force can bring about that $1 million idea. And of course, infinite intelligence can bring money about in infinite ways. Now, let's say I say a loving relationship. If I say that she has to be blah, blah, there's certain criteria that I'm going to have. There's certain criteria that you're going to have in a relationship. I mean, that's a given. But there's certain things that we're going to be a little bit open, for. And whatever that is, to the extent of my criterias, then that's going to determine how broad or how narrow that manifestation is going to be. For example, when I was in California, um, I had this desire to move out to Georgia. Now, I didn't know how it was going to take place. I just set the intention.
Mm.
I'm in Georgia. I'm moving to Georgia. And then events started lining up. And I know that you'll be able to attest to this and you'll be able to give your own scenario of this. But I didn't know how it was going to happen. Didn't have the money, didn't have the resources. I was working a job, barely, being able to, with my roommate, paying our bills and so forth. So I didn't know how Georgia was going to happen. But what happened was a series of events. One was I went to a high school reunion, and a friend that I grew up with said, "Oh man, I'm in Georgia. If you need a place to stay, you got a place
Oh,
to
wow.
stay." Then the money issue came. One day I'm driving home from work. I guess I'm like on the 405 or whatever, but I'm on my way home from work, and you know how traffic can be there. Backed up traffic. I see this tank of a car. I think they call it like an LTD, but it was a big car. I was driving in a Toyota Tercel at the time, so it was basically a box on wheels. I
Hmm.
could see this guy coming behind me, and I'm thinking to myself, he's not going to be able to stop. And
Hmm.
he plowed into me, forcing me into the car in front of me, forcing that car
Oh,
into the car in front of it.
wow.
And the car was totaled out, my car, but it was still running. And so when the claim adjuster came, I said, well, I want to keep the car. He said, well, we'll pay you the difference. The difference was the money that I used to drive that car on 3 wheels to Atlanta, with the young lady that I was seeing
Wow.
at the time.
Wow, there you go.
Now, the funny thing was there was no harm done to me. And you have to be mindful, when you're looking at manifestation, that no harm to you or no harm to anyone else, because
Yeah.
you have to set that intention. But that was how I made the transition. But again, I didn't know the bridge of incident, but I was able to see it when it manifested. I'll say, oh, this is how I'm going to do it now. How about you? Have you had an experience where you set the intention and then when it showed up, it didn't come any way that you thought that it would, but it showed up?
If I have an idea in my mind of how I want something to show up, I don't have any ease about it.
Yeah.
I notice that. So I try to stay out of the way. There are some obvious ways that things can happen
Yeah.
to get us to the place that we want to be, right? So our logical, rational mind will almost lean on those things to help us feel like it's possible. So it might feel like, oh, this is one way that it can happen. So let me just think of this way so that I'll feel like it's possible.
Mhm.
So while it might be loosening up resistance, it can also be adding resistance depending on the moment, depending on where you're at. It could be adding resistance because it has to be this way basically, or you're not really open to, like you said, infinite possibilities of how something can happen. Um, yeah, I don't, I kind of like to stay open, and I don't, at least now at this point, like I'm kind of aware that when I start thinking of like, oh, like I want this to happen, and if it's like typically this is typically accomplished this through this route, I'll back off from it, and I
Mhm.
won't tie it to that necessarily. I'll be like, oh, it could happen this way, but it could happen
Absolutely. Absolutely.
unnumbered ways
Yeah.
that we can't even think of. And first, if I think of a specific example while we're talking, I'll bring it up. But it's
Certainly.
just,
Yeah.
I feel like that's just a constant overall feeling of like, I know that if I if I want to know how it's going to happen, then I'm not trusting it.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to stay away from that. Like some people call it messing in the middle, right?
Yeah.
In the community, in level communities, they call it messing in the middle because it's
Yeah.
like there's this bridge of incidents, and if you're insisting that happen, and there's some confusion, I think sometimes, understandably, what is considered messing in the middle, and what is actually um, part of the desire.
Mhm.
Like I have some clients who have asked me like, I want this to happen, and I want it to be in this way, and they'll think that, oh, am I messing in the middle by saying, no, well, but what they mean in that example, let's say, is I want it to be in this way, as in I want it to include this in the end result. It's not so much the way you want it
The how.
to
Yeah.
unfold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like let's say, um, like one way is like, okay, I want to um I want to be in a relationship with this specific person, let's say,
Mhm.
okay? But I want them to not see anybody else until
Yeah.
then, because I can't stand the idea of them being with anybody
Yeah.
else until I'm with them. Okay?
Yeah.
So what happens is they're okay, so they want to be in a relationship with a specific person. If they become obsessed with less on the idea and feeling of experiencing a relationship with this person,
Yeah.
and they become obsessed with the idea of like, are they seeing someone else? Are they seeing someone else?
Yeah.
Are they dating someone else? Who else is dating them now? I can't have them. How come somebody else gets to have them? It just becomes this really obsessive lack idea. And then I say, well, why don't you just imagine being with this person, and when you're with this person, you feel good that we got together, and I
Correct.
feel good about who they're showing up as and what their life experiences have been until me, you
Mhm.
know? That kind of encompasses that feeling
Correct.
alone, it encapsulates, it implies that already. It
Yeah.
implies that they didn't go around with like 10 other people in the time between you wanting them and you being with them.
Yeah.
So you can do that in a second. It takes like seconds to do that, to just add to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, of you're with them, you feel good, you feel valued, and you feel um like they want to feel like last pickings, like, oh, they went around with everybody, now they're going to be
Yeah.
with me, whatever, um yeah, you can just encapsulate that in seconds, and you can imply that, and you can
Yeah.
add that as part of your manifestation, as part of your end result, rather than trying to mess with the whole process, saying, I got to make sure they don't see someone else, I got to make sure they
Right.
don't date around too much, it's very obsessive at that point. And you're never going to manifest the relationship
Right.
with them at that point.
Yeah.
Definitely not in a way that feels good at the end, because you're allowing your focus to be on what you don't want
Correct.
and messing with
Correct.
the process.
Yeah.
You're not trusting it, you're not letting it go. Like, it's kind of like, sometimes I compare it to, like, imagine a baby chick, and
Hmm.
they're so, like, kind of fragile looking, they're so
Yeah.
light and fluffy, small, right? um if you want to hold a baby chick, you can't hold it tight, its eyes will bug out. You know what I mean? You have to hold it gently,
Yeah.
just let it sit with you. And I kind of see manifestation as that. Like, whatever your desire is, whatever you want to appreciate in physical reality,
Hmm.
you have to hold it gently.
Yeah.
Because if you squeeze it, it's never going to want to come to you again. It's not going to come to you.
Absolutely. I liked earlier you had talked about your current partner, and you said, when I was married, but people think that, let's say that you get your quote, your SP, your specific person, and it doesn't work out. That's perfectly fine. Let's say you get your ideal job. Let's say you get that multiple $1 million lottery win, whatever that thing is, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
We have to allow that to be okay and allow that to be a part of, the story, and that it's okay. I think that because we have so many creators out there, and they give the impression that, well, I've done this work and everything just works out perfectly and you don't have a care in the world. And I tell folks, that's just not how life works. I said, now, they may not show up and tell you what's going on in their life, but I promise you they got going ons in their life. I said, because that's the human experience.
I just want to say, I think that's very toxic,
Yeah.
not only for the people who are kind of feeling like, in order to be a conscious manifester, things have to be perfect for you. It's just unattainable goal.
Yeah.
Life is not supposed to be like that.
Correct.
But I honestly, like, more so, like, as the creator, like, of that content, I think that's toxic for them, because that's a lot of pressure, especially if you have a big following, which I don't have a huge following, and I don't want a huge
Yeah.
following. I just want the people who are ready to hear
Correct.
what this is,
Hmm.
and the way I say it, I guess,
Yeah.
is how they need to hear it. But yeah, it's toxic, because if you build this huge platform, this huge following, and let's be honest, like, those people are polished. Like, they've literally, I've taken trainings for that kind of stuff, for coaches, for just like online businesses, of like
Hmm.
how to be polished, how to be
Yeah.
professional, so people take you seriously,
Yeah.
and they're falling into that trap of feeling like they have to present themselves a certain way in order for people to believe them,
Yeah.
and to take them seriously, and they can't show any imperfection, otherwise they're not going to be uh, a credit they're not be credible anymore.
Correct.
And I think that I honestly wouldn't, at this point in my life, I would not take the advice of somebody who is posing as perfect. And
Yeah.
it's not from a bad place. I think they really believe that they're doing good by doing that, because the other side of that is, oh, I'm not going to complain to people, because you should be complaining, you should be
Yeah.
always positive. There's a balance.
Yeah.
You don't want to complain to the
Yeah.
people, to your students, in that sense. But if you're not experiencing life, if your hands are not in the clay, then you're not alive. Like, you're not living life.
Correct.
you have to get your hands dirty. So if your hands are never dirty, then like Tigran likes a saying, it says a working man's hands are never dirty. So like if you go to a mechanic shop, you know, and his hands are all greasy, and like they want to shake your hand, shake their hand because those hands are not dirty because they're working hands. You know, there's nothing dirty about it. Yeah, there's grease on them, but don't be afraid of it because there's nothing wrong with it. You know, and so I think that's why, like when we were speaking with Linda last time together, I specifically like really liked, that was one of the parts of the conversation I really liked, of just like acknowledging that the aim is not perfection, because there's an imperfection that is perfect.
Correct.
That's needed for this life. This life's not meant to be perfect in the way that we pressure ourselves to make it.
Yeah. I agree. I see so many creators out there, and you say about a large following. I think that when people are ready to grow, there's a immature audience, and I know, and we both know that if we wanted to grow 100,000, 1,000,000 followers, simply tell people what they want to hear. I mean, that's so if you tell them what they want and tell them that they can manifest anything, no matter. I lose people in my Facebook group sometimes simply because I tell them the truth. They're not occupying the state. And there's people that tell them that you can do, be, or have anything you want. Not if you're not occupying the state. Not if you're not being the person that can be healthy. If your thoughts every day, day in, day out is on illness, on poverty, on bad relationships, nobody loves me, then you can affirm anything you want, you know, at a state akin to sleep just before going to bed. And it's not going to show up in your world because that's not your predominant thought.
You won't really be able to even reach that state in your state akin to sleep if there's such a big gap between what your usual mental diet is in your inner conversations, and then it's just going to be, it's going to feel like there's this block, this wall between you and that feeling of trying to feel it. But if you can inch towards it, because that's really the goal, right? We can't just jump from state.
Certainly, absolutely.
Yeah, but you can inch towards it, and then that's the beauty of it, I think. Exactly like what you were saying, that if you do accomplish that state, that end result in the state akin to sleep, then the next day it becomes easier to go back into that state throughout the day. And I like how Neville says, like, I think he's the one who said this, that like you wear that feeling like a perfume throughout the day. Like let it stay with you, let it linger with you. And that's like the goal sort of in this whole like processes thing. But that's attainable. It's attainable, and that's actually, the manifestation is just a byproduct of that essence. Yeah.
I like that you stated about inching towards it, because many of us want to do quantum leaps. And so we want to go from broke to billionaire, you know, overnight. And typically it doesn't happen that way because there's a mind shift that has to happen. So it may be listening to Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, Dr. Joe Dispenza, whomever, and all of a sudden you hear something and it clicks. So that click of that new idea, that new concept takes you closer. Then all of a sudden you listen to something else. Now, sometimes that getting closer will allow you to do a quantum leap. So one day you move from, you know, being homeless, and then all of a sudden you got an apartment because that one click, and then it opens up a new opportunity and a new opportunity, and it builds upon it. One day you look back a year, 5 years, 10 years, and you look at this amazing life, but it didn't just happen. There was a process that typically takes place. Now, in the happenings, there are those things that happen rapidly, but then there's those other things that seem like they take a little bit longer. Has that been?
Yeah. And I think that, like, I feel like a big leap is, they happen. It's just we're not paying attention to the fact that that big leap is actually made of small, small movements. You know, it might we might have this idea of like, oh, everything changed right away. I changed my shape, my state, and everything changed. Well, it might have happened very quickly, but it happened in increments that we're not seeing it as.
Correct.
And that's kind of how I kind of like to incorporate Abraham's teachings to this stuff because I think they specifically have a good way of like the moving up the emotional scale. I think they explain that well because when you're wanting to make a quantum leap, let's say like emotionally, like you feel like crap, like you're in despair, and then you want to feel joy, right? It's like you're not gonna go from the bottom to the top of
Correct.
that emotional list. Not that you can't, it's just
Correct.
that from where you are, you can go to the next one or you can jump to. Like you're not gonna go like completely. You will in the whole picture of
Yeah.
things. It's just that it are you counting it as one jump from there to there, or are you seeing it as increments? Because even if it looks like one jump, it's actually you're passing through the other states as you get there. So it's not like it's empty space in between one your point A to point B. It's happening in increments, whether or not we're acknowledging
Aware.
that.
Correct. Correct. You say that I did a study the other day. I guess it was on Sunday, and it was about shifts.
Mhm.
And I took them like through a 5-step process in the cross they called shift. And I told him, I said, listen, I'm taking you through these steps, and it may take me 30 minutes to an hour to take you through these steps. I said, but these steps happen in seconds, milliseconds. I said, so I'm telling you step by step of how to make the shift. I said, but when it happens, it's going to happen so fast that you're going to get in a habit. So when we're talking about the processes of Neville or Abraham Hicks or whatever, they may take us through a series of steps. But when we're actually going through the process, literally we're talking something, it seems like a shift of a thought that happens in milliseconds. All of a sudden we say, well, it just happened, instantaneously. It did and it didn't. So it's going back to what
Yeah.
you said. There's those increments that we go through so quickly that we don't even realize that, for example, when you were a kid and you learned how to tie your shoes, the first time you were doing that over and over and over again, it seemed like an impossible task. But the second you got it down and it was on autopilot, you tie your shoes and it seemed like it's just one motion of tying your shoe. That's just not the case, but that's how we feel.
Yeah. And I think like you said it best, it is and it isn't.
Yeah,
It is that it happens all at once, but it also isn't. It completely depends on how you're looking at it in that moment. Because yes, both are true. It did happen.
yeah,
It was a quantum leap, and at the same time, there was a process to it.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So when you're, how do you manage? And I don't like using the term manage, but I'll use it right now.
Mhm.
You have a client, and because of where they're at that moment, they're okay, they're unemployed. So they come to you, they're unemployed, and say, well, by next week, I want to be a millionaire. How did you manage the person's expectations so that they can get into a place that they can become abundant, that they can attract into their lives millions or that relationship or better health? How do you direct them so that they're having at that moment where they're at a realistic expectation, or do you just say, oh yeah, you can be a millionaire and just start, acting like a millionaire? How do you handle that?
I probably wouldn't have a session with somebody who's wanting to go from broke to millionaire. That's I don't always do um, like consulting calls before taking on a client, but yeah, that's one of the things that it's like, okay, let's use the phrase realistic expectations. Now, a realistic expectation for your regular person is going to be different than a realistic expectation for me
Mhm.
because I know that reality is very malleable and
Yeah,
I know that I mean there is nothing that's impossible really.
absolutely.
So, yeah, but at the same time it's got to feel real to you,
Yeah,
right? So that's what I mean by realistic expectations. Like that's funny actually because both the word realistic and expectation are like just they hit the nail on the head for that because Like, this is something Abraham says too. They say, you get what you expect. And the funny thing is that in society, we've turned the word expectation to this like a demand that we don't really believe.
Yeah.
Like, I expect you to respect me. Not really, you don't, because
Yeah.
they're not respecting you. You're not expecting them to respect you. But the true meaning of expectation is an assumption.
Yeah.
You assume that this is what it is, and this is what it's going to be when you um, have this encounter with this person. So to have an expectation is what is going to be real. So whatever is realistic is going to be based on what your natural expectation is. So whatever we want to do with that, but that's
Yeah. I like two things that were said. And I also, there's been people that reached out to me and we had a conversation, and I'm like where they're at the moment. They're not, being the realistic expectation. And I say, I can't move forward with you because see, no matter what I say to that person at that point, they're going to be pushing against it. And so when their manifestation doesn't take place, they're going to look at me as the culprit. And each individual is their own, success system. If success or failure, it's on the individual. My job is to only give you the tools.
the tools, yeah.
It's not to manifest for you. I give you the tools so that you can get in the frequency of that, but you can choose not to be in the frequency. And so when I realize that people are not in the frequency, often people may show up in my Facebook group, for example, and they say, well, I've had bad knees for 20 years, and, I'm imagining the state akin to sleep that I'm going to have new knees by tomorrow. And I'm like, but that's not been your self-talk for the past 20 years. So it's really
Exactly.
challenging for you. I said, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but the truth of the
Exactly.
matter is, do you believe it? And most of the time, they don't. So they think that in simply just saying it, that I'm going to be a millionaire, that I'm going to be in a loving relationship, but they don't
Yeah.
believe it. They think that the affirmation in itself is enough. And
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is, it isn't enough. It goes back to the frequency. It goes back to the vibration. If you can't hold that in frequency, if you can't hold that in vibration, then you're not going to hold it in the physical reality.
Yeah. It's a jumping off point though. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like it's sort of like that's the point where you realize that you want this thing, which is
Mm-hmm.
an important part of the process.
Absolutely.
It's just that's not going to get you there. You still have to move through, the positions of levels of belief on this thing. And belief is what? It's just
Absolutely.
a practice thought, right? You can believe anything if you keep saying it to yourself.
Correct.
Well, as long as you're not resisting it at the same time.
Correct.
Eventually you're gonna buy into it. How do we have the beliefs that we formed during childhood? We just kept hearing it around us.
Correct.
Other people who believed it, other people who, you know, and it became their reality, so it becomes ours because there's this natural expectation. But
And even beyond that, what happens as you start believing, evidence starts showing up.
mhm,
You understand? It's not just that we solely, for example, I told you about the accident and me wanting to move from California to
mhm,
Georgia.
mhm,
Evidence like the person at the high school reunion, like the car accident, like
mhm,
the job giving me the severance, there were things that showed up. Once, for example, for the person that starts to say, okay, I want to be a multimillionaire, evidence is going to start, a job opportunity is going to present itself, a business opportunity is going to present itself, somebody
yeah,
that they didn't know before all of a sudden is going to come into their life. Your life is not going to stay what it used to be when
no,
you're making that transition. It's impossible. If you're looking at a loving relationship, for example, and you're not a nice person, opportunities are going to start showing up where you can be a nicer person. You understand what I'm saying?
yes, because
Things are
it's
going,
supporting you. It's supporting
absolutely,
you towards that.
absolutely, absolutely. So that's the key, no matter what it is that you want. And this is why I tell people, Neville says, live from the end. So living from the end speaks to a lifestyle. Many people want certain things to show up in their life, but they don't want the lifestyle. They don't want to be the millionaire. They don't want to be the person in the loving religion. They don't want to be somebody who's healthier. You understand?
Yeah.
And they keep
Yeah.
saying, why isn't this showing up in my life? Because you're not embodying, you talked about it earlier, embodying, clothing yourself with the
Yeah.
perfume or the feeling of the
Right.
lifestyle.
Right. Exactly. The sense of it. And the funny thing is that we do that, everybody does that when we're waiting for the evidence in order to enter the state.
Yeah.
But the evidence is only it's a reflection of your state. That's it. So it's like you can play this game forever, but you can say, I'll feel that way when it happens, but it's not going to happen until you feel that way. And,
Absolutely.
and the reason we don't always make that connection is because we don't realize we were feeling a certain way when that thing shows up. Because
Correct.
we were doing it like idly. We were just like,
Wasn't thinking about
you
it.
know,
Yeah, just didn't even give it a thought. It happened naturally. And it goes back to what Neville would often say when manifestation shows up. People say, well, it would have happened anyway because it happens so naturally. It's, I tell people, everybody's expert manifestors. Most of
yeah.
us are just manifesting what it is that we don't want, and we're doing it very well.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, so,
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. At one point during our conversation, I thought of this story. It was something you had asked me, and it reminded me of this story. There's a I have a friend who is also a coach. His name is Jerry. He actually started a clubhouse group of like mostly coaches, and it's very Neville focused. And this was Clubhouse. I don't really go on a Clubhouse anymore, and the group kind of just turned into like a text thread that we keep in touch with. But I met him because he invited me to be in this Clubhouse conversation. And the funny thing is that it's very interesting his story. I think at that point he was living in Chicago with his wife or girlfriend, I don't remember. And I think they had a child. Their child was like a baby at that point. And I think they didn't want to stay in Chicago. Like they were looking where to move to. And they weren't really clear on that. But he knew that he had to enter the state of what it's like to be living where he wants to live, even if he didn't know where that was. I can't remember now if he specifically knew that was Hawaii or not, but um, he would literally, I remember him saying he would go into the closet because that's where it was quiet. And this reminds me of when Lindo says that he used to go to the bathroom and sit on the floor and meditate. So he would like go close the door, I guess, and just like go into the state of what it feels like when he's living in that place that feels good to live there. Um, at this point in his life, what's going to feel good at this point in my life? So apparently he got an ad like shortly after that for like it was like a good deal on tickets to Hawaii. So he bought it that moment. He bought the tickets for them to go to Hawaii without even telling his wife. And he basically was like, okay, now I have to tell this woman that we're moving to Hawaii just on like a whim because he trusted it because he knew that all this time he had been going into his workshop, in the closet and feeling himself into what he wants to feel like,
yeah,
when they move to wherever it is they move to. So he trusted that and he did it. And they've been living in Hawaii for a while and they have 3 kids now and they're like living like in like farmlands and they have all this like awesome stuff they're doing. So, and he's coaching. So it's kind of cool. Like it really is that simple. And it seems like it's like when you can't like hold on to it, you can't grasp
yeah,
the evidence yet. And it seems so out of logic. It's just not rational. And I like what that Neville really focuses on. Like, don't base your beliefs or expectations on what's rational
yeah,
because if you're going to wait for something to feel rational for for it to feel like okay I can manifest this, then you're never going to manifest
correct,
anything new because anything that feels rational is just old news at that point.
correct, correct, correct.
Yeah, so you've got to trust that this new thing that excites you is real even
Yeah,
if by other people's definitions, it's not rational
Yeah.
because trust me, their family, when they decided to up and move to Hawaii, it did not look rational to
Correct.
anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. And I think that that's a good note to close on. Our goal isn't to tell anyone what's rational for them.
no,
The biggest thing that we want to say that is that you have to get into the state to occupy that thing that you said. If you're not in the state, if you're not in the vibration, and if you're listening to Abraham Hicks, if you're listening to Neville Goddard, whomever, Joseph Murphy, you have to begin to operate the vibe. And I like what you said earlier. Initially it's going to be baby steps. It's not going to be often there's growth in faith. There's stages to faith and so forth. So one person like Neville's student Louise Barley, I mean, massive faith. But she went to the master teacher. He told her some things. She saw that they worked. From that point on, she was on this roller coaster ride. But everybody's not at that level. But to the extent that we're able to get into that state and occupy it, like you said just a moment, it's not always even easy, especially when you got naysayers around you saying, you know, what are you talking about? What do you think that you're going to do? And asking you all these questions of how is this going to manifest? How are you going to pay these bills? How are you going to, where are you going to live?
they're just you pushed out.
Yeah,
They're just you pushed out though,
yeah,
because so
yeah,
they're saying what
yeah,
you're actually thinking
yeah,
inside. So
yeah, yeah. But great note. Anything in closing?
yeah, you mentioned Louise Burley. Did you see the videos I had, short videos I had made about I spoke with her son? The
I
Neville's name's
didn't, but I'll go back and I want to say this before we do wind down. You've reached out to a number of people and had some success in reaching. I pretty much talked to Lindo, and I know another student that used to go with his mom. His name is John. So he and I
yes,
will, John.
yes, I have a video with him.
Okay, so John and I will speak again. He's in my group, so I'll reach out to him.
Oh, really?
One
That's
time I
nice.
reached out to him, and the question was about Neville charging. Everybody says Neville did charge, and I try to
Yeah,
explain it. I said Neville in his own talks. Says if you listen to enough of Neville's talks, Neville tells you that he charged. Now he didn't pass a plate when you got inside. There was a door
yeah,
fee, and so
yeah.
I
There
reached
was
out to
a
John.
donation box.
Correct, and as I told, and I reached out to Mr. Lindo. I said, did Neville charge? He said, yes, he did. He said it was nominal. It was, $2 to $3. But that's what Neville said. And matter of fact, one of Neville's students, the black guy that manifested real estate, said
On
that
Wilshire.
yeah, he said that he and his wife had enough money to go to so many Neville talks and then be able to pay the babysitter and so forth. But he had that level of success thereafter. So the whole point was Neville did charge, but people come back and say, "Oh, Neville didn't charge." Well, he did. They misunderstand what he was saying.
What about when another supporting fact for that is when he tells a story about when he came to Los Angeles, they were still living in New York. His
Yeah.
daughter was young, I believe, and he brought his
Wife
himself, his wife, and his daughter,
and a
and I don't know
niece and a niece.
and a niece. Okay, I
Yeah,
don't know if it was a niece or if it was
there was a niece that
a
also came.
the
Yeah,
older son if he ever came. But yeah, like
yeah,
so he was bringing his family
correct,
to LA for
correct,
temporary because and he set up this like set of talks.
correct,
I think that's like what the four lessons ended up coming from. It might have come from that series, but the book, the four lessons, five lessons. So basically he had agreed before he came here with some religious uh,
yeah,
organization that
yeah,
he was going to use their space to do his talks.
hmm,
And when they found out that he was charging like, I think it was like $100 for like the 5 talks, which was a lot then,
yeah,
um, when the person who ran the church, when he got here, he was talking, they were speaking and they're like, we don't even charge that much for
correct,
for our
correct,
events.
correct,
And then Neville's like, well, that's you. And he's like, well, I came with my family.
correct,
I'm here. Like, this is my work and this is how
correct,
I'm supporting my family, basically. So, if you have a problem with it, I'll do it to someone else. So Neville had someone find him another space
correct,
to do it in because that priest who's running that church didn't feel comfortable renting out the hall to a guy who's making more money doing the lectures than the priest
Absolutely.
was making.
Absolutely.
The
And
priest was making.
the other dynamics was Neville did not teach a physical Christ. He taught Christ metaphor, allegory.
Yeah.
And the guy
Yeah.
said, well, I teach a physical Christ, blah, blah, blah. So they had that disagreement.
Mhm.
And Neville said, for the first talk, since I'm speaking to your students, I'll honor what you say.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yes.
from that point on, after that, I'm going to teach the way that I teach. And that's when he had the young lady get him the space. And
Yes.
uh, but absolutely. So, and again, each person has to do. My goal, and I'm sure your goal isn't to teach it. If you don't want to charge, great. Um,
Right.
if you don't believe in God, it doesn't matter. Do you, whomever you are, do you, and discover who God is for you. Our goal is not to teach you or to tell you what to believe, but simply that you believe, and according to as you believe, that's what's going to show up in your life. So